The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zigzag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, and we're a little town adjacent to Oakland, a man-made island. And from the 420 studios, I get to talk to some of the most interesting people in the world. And today is no exception. My good friend and fellow podcaster, Mr. Alan Blumkin. How are you, sir?
Okay.
Good. I know all things considered you say okay. You got some bad news from a good friend of yours today.
Yeah.
And you're experiencing a loss, and as you said, this might be good therapy. So let's talk Bowman Topps, the baseball card feud. And Alan is, like myself, a big baseball card nut. And I'd like to hear what he has to say about, incidentally, to those of you out there that don't follow our shows, Alan Blumkin was awarded by unanimous decision the 2017 MVP, Most Valuable Podcaster, on my podcast radio network, Comfortably Zoned. And it is because he is reliable, loyal, and he has an encyclopedic mind and a passion for sports. So just want you guys and gals out there to know what you're listening, to whom you are listening. Al Blumkin, my friend.
Thank you, Ralph. I'd like to discuss tonight the wars from 1951 through 1955 between Topps and Bowman for control of the baseball card market. This ended after 1955 when Topps bought out Bowman. But to kids who grew up during that period or started to collect cards during that period, there's always wondering why certain players were not in one set or the other. And basically Bowman was the first company that put out cards after World War II. They put out a 48 card set in 1948, expanded it to 240 in 1949. There were a number of players, not in 1949 because they were produced by a company called Leaf, which put up baseball cards in 1948 and 1949. 1950, Bowman had the market to itself, and that's the most complete set of the Hall of Fame players that were playing during that period. The only prominent player that was not in that set was Stan Musial, who was in the 48 and 49, but Stan had a very, very complicated relationship with both Bowman and Topps. And so in 1951... Can you elaborate on
that, what that was about?
He just didn't feel... From what I read, he just didn't feel he was getting enough compensation. They were paying like $150 or $100 or $150 to every player. Mm-hmm. And he thought that he felt that because of his stature that he was entitled to more.
Okay.
And we'll get into what happened with Ted Williams when he signed with Topps a few years later. So in 1951, Topps put out their redbacks and bluebacks. I don't know if you remember those at all. The redbacks came out early.
I do vaguely. I've seen them in collections. I've never had one, but it was part of a game.
Yeah, part of the game. You shuffle them and you play a game with them. They put out 52 redbacks, which came out early and 52 bluebacks, which came out late. The bluebacks, even though the redbacks have more of the big players, the bluebacks are much more expensive because they're harder to find. And there were certain players that showed up in that set. For example, Ralph Kiner, Dominic DiMaggio, Bobby Dorr, Mel Parnell. There are a number of players, prominent players, that showed up in that set that were not in the 51 Bowman set. The 51 Bowman set had 324 cards, including the first real rookie cards of Mickey Mantle and Willie Mays, both of which were in high numbers that no kids ever saw because they were released too late in the summer. But people who collected at the time, now that was the first year I collected, and I didn't really know one player from another. But
that's how you learned.
That's how I learned the numbers. Yeah, and then I got interested to start looking at record books and yearbooks and things like that. But that's how I learned about baseball. My parents could have cared less about it, and so I remember I got into trouble when my grandfather came to visit us. We moved from Bronx to the Queens, and the end of June of that year, my grandparents came to visit. My grandfather gave me $50. I immediately took it to the candy store and bought Bowman baseball cards. My mother particularly was not too thrilled with that. Because I don't have any of these old ones. They're all thrown out, but that's how I learned about the teams and the players. Jackie Robinson was not in that set. Ralph Kiner was not in that set. Stan Musial was not in that set. The only one of the big four at the time that was in that set was Ted Williams.
So the different companies dealt with the players individually.
Yeah.
And were they exclusive contracts?
Some of them had exclusives. Basically, the exclusivity started, at a low scale in 51, and it blew up to some extent in 52. Bowman came out with a 252 card set. Topps went from putting out these small redbacks and bluebacks to put out their first major set, which consisted of 407 cards. And there are certain players that are not in there, were not in the originals. There have been custom cards made of a good portion of them, but the Yankees' Vic Raschi was never on a Topps card. Casey Stengel was never on a Topps card during that period. Sal Magley wasn't on a Topps card during that period. Whitey Lockman was in the 51, but he wasn't in any other. The two Dodgers that were missing were Carl Furillo and Don Newcomb. Nellie Fox was not in those cards, and Topps cards. And what happened?
Certainly not Maury Wills.
Yeah, well, that's way before. Jackie Robinson was never on a Bowman card after 1950.
Oh, they must.
Somebody posted in one of the Dodger groups on Facebook, the 52 Bowman Dodgers, and I put down that Mel Robinson. I said he was under exclusive contract to Topps at the time. And it blew up.
May I ask you what you think of these customized cards?
To some extent, I like them because they fill in a void.
Okay.
They fill a void, and basically, for example, a friend of mine found a place in Brooklyn where he bought a 58 Topps set in pretty good conditions, an album. He went to the antique store, and they sold him a fairly decent 58 set for $300. Wow. Very, very underpriced. The dealer didn't know what he was doing. 58 had a unique situation. There was a Phillies first baseman by the name of Ed Boucher, who was supposed to be on a card that was pulled because Boucher had certain legal difficulties.
No, he had a child.
Yeah. And somebody put out a custom card of him, for $3.
Okay.
So I bought it, and I'm giving it to my friend the next time I see him, so he can put that in with the in the set. It fills
Other
voids.
than Boucher, that's a pretty complete set. Was
Yeah.
Ted Williams in that set?
Yeah, that was his last year. Ted Williams.
Oh, wow.
Ted Williams
I know
was
Musial was. As a matter of fact, Musial.
Joe DiMaggio was never on it either at any Topps or Bowman cards when they were issued. Yeah.
That's interesting. Because he played, his last year was 51.
51. There's no cards of him either in Bowman or Topps. And what happened basically with Williams was that Williams was in the 50 and 51 Bowman. And 52 and 53, he was in the military. There were no cards of him. He signed a 5-year deal when it came out, a 5-year deal with Topps. That started in 1954 when he was the first and last card in the set, and ended with the 1958 set. And he signed because Topps was paying him the whopping amount of $400 a year.
Right.
In fact, Bowman issued a 54 Bowman Top Williams card that they had to pull because of the Topps exclusivity contract, and the real cards on those, they've been reprinted, but the real cards on those are worth a ton of money.
Now, here's something very interesting. Sometimes a lot of kids would get autographs on the card of the player. Go down to the hotel, this, that, and the other.
They knock that downgrades the price. Because it's not pristine.
That lowered the price.
It lowers the price, yeah.
Of the card.
Yeah.
Who knew? I mean, I'd go down to the hotels sometimes with baseball cards. And who knew that in the long run that would indeed be lowering the price? And are there counterfeit cards that are on the market?
Well, all the top sets from the top sets of 52, 53, and 54 have been reproduced almost in their entirety. But you can't pass.
I mean the clandestine guy who go on the internet. Here's my collection.
No, you can't. You can't pass the reprints off as real ones because basically the Topps cards.
Of course, it's stealing. But are people doing it? Trying to do it?
Probably. But anybody who knows anything knows that the 3 sets that the Topps reprinted are all smaller than the originals.
No, they're bigger than the originals.
No, they're smaller than the originals. The reprints are smaller than the originals. The reprints are the same size as the 57 cards, which was the first year that Topps went to what is the standard measurement now.
Okay.
The others were bigger.
I stand corrected. And I know the reprints are of a glossy nature.
Yeah, and the reprinted Bowman sets from 48 to 53 have been reprinted. And those cards are, as you just said, they're glossy and they're not on the same material as the real ones. You can't pass this.
Okay. Tell me a story then off the top of your head when you were a kid and collecting cards. You'd put 50 cents down in those days. That would buy 20 packs of gum.
Yeah.
Packs of cards.
The gum went down the sewer.
Right,
the gum went down right down the sewer. My mother
got chewed, and my dentist will over the years will attest to it. That was absolute garbage.
Yeah, and the Redbacks and Bluebacks came out with this caramel. They had two cards attached. That's how they came out. And they had caramel gum, and it even smelled bad. And that went right down. You know, my mother said to me, "You can't bring the gum in." So where else do you put it when you're 8, 9, 10 years old? You throw it in the sewer.
Right.
But what happened?
Did those cards sometimes stick together?
Yeah. And the backs of the last card that was, on the gum, at times were damaged.
Right.
But that they came out, some people came out years ago with some sort of mechanism to clean those cards, the backs of those cards off.
Right. Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah. The number ones in each set are very, very hard to come by in excellent condition, because when you were a kid, you used to put rubber bands around them.
Absolutely.
And the one always, the first card, that always got damaged from that.
Bicycle, not car. If you didn't put them in the spokes of your bicycle.
Yeah, well, the ones you put in the bicycles were the bums. These guys that were mediocre players, and somehow you wind up getting them every time you bought 2 packs.
That's right. Tell the story, Al, for those of in our audii that haven't heard it or don't know, what made the 51 cards, the Mantle card and what have you, so valuable.
Now the 52 tops, you mean?
52 tops.
Yeah, okay. What happened with that is that Topps issued the cards in series, which is a practice they did until 1973. And in 1952, they issued 6 series. The first one was 1 to 80. The second one was 81 to 130. Third was 130 through 190. Fourth was 191 through 250. The fifth was 250 through 310. Now, those cards came out basically during the school year. Okay, and they were pretty available to most people. The big card in the last, the fifth series for collectors was Willie Mays, and they put out a 6 series from 311 to 407 in the summertime, when most kids were either away for the summer in camp, or traveling with their families, whatever.
Mountains or whatever.
What?
Up in the mountains?
Yeah, anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most kids, and so there's nobody to buy them.
Right.
So they and Topps had a backlog of them, an inventory of them that was huge. And several years down the road, before card pricing became a business, decided that the warehouse was too full, and they dumped a whole load of them into the Gowanus Canal.
Wow.
And Mantle.
They put them out on barges and what have you.
Yeah. Mantle was the first card. He was 311. Jackie Robinson was in there. Roy Campanella was in there. Pee Wee Reese was in there. Alvin Dark was in there. And the last card, number 407, was a rookie third baseman on the then Boston Braves named Eddie Matthews.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And Topps would get all the rookies.
Yeah, they moved.
Yeah, Topps went in and got all the rookies, basically. The Bowman set was missing, was 252, and they were missing Jackie Robinson. They were missing, that set, Allie Reynolds for the Yankees. They were missing, Musial had a card, a Bowman card in 52 and 53. They were missing, such players as Ted Kluszewski and Hank Sauer and Bobby Shantz. Guys who were not Hall of Famers, but were pretty, important to us having whole sets. But it really came to the fore. The same thing happened in 53, although Topps 53 set, which is a beautiful set, was missing a lot of key players, and Bowman still had the key players. In 54 and 55 were the years that this really came to a head. Me and my friends spent God knows how many dimes and nickels and quarters looking for 54 and 55 55 Topps Mickey Mantles that did not exist.
Oh, well,
Mickey, after 53, Mickey, for the last 2 years of the production of Bowman cards, was in the Bowman sets only.
When did they start putting checklists in the cards?
56, I think, believe, was the first year. The first year that Topps had had the monopoly.
Yeah, but then you could see what you're missing.
Exactly. And
the mistake people made, you're a kid, you don't know.
No, I know.
You want to keep the cards. They put in pencil generally, or sometimes in pen. They'd little box.
Yeah.
And if you had the card, you'd put the X in there. Well, that ruins the pristineness of that card, which is part of the set.
Yeah, and Topps in both the 53 and 55 sets were missing some numbers high in the set. So people probably looked for these numbers, and for one reason or another, probably contractual, they didn't exist. But in 54 and 55 is where it really got delineated, and Topps had an awful lot of obscurities in 54 and 55. 55 had several players who were in that set that never played a major league game.
Okay, but they might have been up in spring training, or they projected
AAA guys, and then the 54 set after the first 75 or so cards, they put in a lot of coaches. When they start putting in coaches and individual cards in a set, you know that there's a problem with the availability of players.
Yeah, you're trying to get as many cards as you can to make the set respectable. Yeah,
and you got so many cards of bad players. I'll give you an example. Today, my friend Jim Howell, who runs the Baseball Sweet 16 Facebook site, which is a site for everything from 1901 through 1960 at 18 leagues. And he puts up, remember, so-and-so, and he puts up basically obscure players, at that point. If I recognize the name, I can do profiles on them. He put up today a picture of by the name of Dick Week, Weik. You can look him up in Baseball Reference. This guy had a card as a Tiger in 1954 Topps set. That's the only mainstream card he was ever on, and that's the only reason I ever heard of him. This guy, who had a career from 1948 through 1950, and then 1953 and 1954, missed 2 years in the military, had a lifetime record of 6-22 with a 5.90 ERA, and he had more walks than innings pitched.
Whoa.
The guy was horrible. Washington had him, and they sent him, came up in 48. They sent him to Cleveland in 1950 for Mickey Vernon, who had been displaced at first base on the Indians by Luke Easter. And then the Indians sent him to the Tigers, they sent Ray Boone to the Tigers and got Art Hamm, and there were, 6 other players involved in that trade. He was one of them going from Cleveland to Detroit, but this guy shouldn't have had a card ever. But he had a card, because that's how badly Topps was scrambling to get players into 54 and 55 sets.
Yeah, but at least he made the majors. He had a bad record. But
but they had plenty of guys like this. And that's how, those of us who were fans back then got to know some of these guys who, if you didn't have a single card of them, you never would have heard of them.
Incredibly obscure guys. Then Topps started putting rookies on the same card.
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 different guys.
Well, the first card that they put multiple players on was in 1954. They put out a card of both Johnny and Eddie O'Brien.
I remember that because that was a card that they reprinted.
Yeah, they reprinted it as part of the set. Yeah.
Yes.
The set reprint.
I remember one of them was a coach with the Seattle Mariners.
Pilot Eddie, yeah.
Pilots, rather, the first
year.
Yeah.
They were both
and
very good basketball players.
Right.
The Pirates had a habit in those days of signing two sport figures and who, outside Dick Rote, picked the wrong one.
Right. Let me ask you this. How did the Pirates get Rocky Nelson? I don't know where I went.
Well, he bounced all over the place. He's in the 52 top set as a Dodger. He's in that last high number set. He's a card as a Dodger. There's a card of him in the 54 set top set as an Indian. He bounced all over the place. He won two.
Played on the 60
Pirates. He won two triple crowns in the International League. One for Montreal in 1955 and one for Toronto in 1958. And after the Pirates
original 4A player.
Yeah. And the Pirates picked him up, and in the last game he had a home run in the 1960 World Series, and he made that stab play on Yogi, the one that in ninth inning when Mantle dove back into first base. And I asked Dick Rote when I spoke to him in 1985, what do you think would have happened if Dick Stewart had been playing there at the time? He said he didn't want to think about that. So Rocky contributed.
It would have been rolling down the right field line.
Yeah, exactly. And Rocky contributed to that team.
Yeah.
But he was essentially a minor leaguer, and you get some of these guys that show up, several years in a row on cards, and they would never make the majors.
Before you went to Pitt, did you have any affinity whatsoever with the Pirates?
Yeah, I bet. I started following them to some extent because they were so bad in the early 50s. And then I bet a friend of mine, I was 14 at the time, bet him $5 in 1958 that the Pirates had finished ahead of the Giants.
Oh, I see.
Who were, of course, that was the first year in San Francisco. The Pirates finished second, and the Giants finished third. And I found out that I could get their games on the radio on the station in Wheeling, West Virginia at night. So I started listening to some of the games. And because once the Dodgers and Giants moved out, the Yankees essentially had a television monopoly. They weren't televising road games in those days.
Did you buy Sport Magazine in the
late
80s?
Yes, all of those sports, the Dell Baseball Annual, all this stuff.
That there were a preponderance of stories about the Pirates accompanied with great Ozzie Sweet color pictures.
Yeah. The classic color picture that they put out in those years was a 1956 picture of the Brooklyn Dodgers gathered around the batting cage, and you had Robinson, Reese, Snyder, Hodges, Ferrillo, Campanella, Erskine, and Newcomb. Because they had been there basically for that whole run.
Our fellow podcaster from the network, who's my co-host on when the 50s, when the Jints and Dodgers played in New York, Peter Trunk has that on his Facebook. So if
he was the one
that wants to...
He put up a collection of the 52 Bowmans, and he put up a collection of the 55 Bowmans, which was known to collectors as a TV set.
Right. My first experience, the Cy-Hemus card is the first card with the TV set. I was 9, and it's the first card I ever remember seeing.
The 55 Bowman had no Robinson, no Snyder, and no LeBlanc. So if you're trying to collect team, it's very, very, from those years, it's very, very hard. You basically have to meld the two sets together because there were guys like Warren Spahn was not on 54, 55 Bowman. Yeah. You have situations like that.
Here's how good it got in 58, my favorite set. Not because it's aesthetically beautiful or anything, although the pictures are great. I'm not complaining about it. It is so all-inclusive. For
Yeah.
instance, in 58, I was following the Braves. After the 57 World Series, my Giants left. I rooted like hell for the Braves to win. National League guy, hated the Yankees, could not wait for the 58 set to come out so I could learn about the Braves. They literally, in that set, had everybody up, including Bob Roselli and Bob Taylor.
Yeah, bonus baby went up on the Mets. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Don't tell me about it. So, like the Mets and the Knicks are pretty much the same. When you say he wound up on the Mets.
Well, Musio showed up, who hadn't been on a Topps card ever. As I told Gene the other day, they did put out custom cards of Musio for from the 52 to 57 Topps years that he was missing cards, and 50 to 58 regular. He was on a 58 Wolfstar card.
Yes,
that they had at the last bunch of cards in the set.
It was blue. It had a blue, light blue.
Yeah,
backing.
a blue for the National League and a red for the background for the American League.
Yes.
And he signed with Topps after that and was on Topps cards. Through 1963.
Yeah.
But there are facsimile cards.
That said, it was so inclusive. You mentioned Boucher, and that's the first person I'd ever heard of that wasn't included in that set who played at all. They were really on top of it.
One of the first cards I ever got when 51 Bowman was an outfielder named Gil Cohn. Coan. But me being 8 years old.
He was a Giant at one time.
Later on, he was.
Yeah.
But of course, being 8 years old, I thought he was Jewish.
Right.
So this is my first exposure. So I started to get Washington Senators, and then I started getting. I think the first Yankee card I got was Yogi, who was number 2 in that set. Ford was number 1 as a rookie card, as number 1. Yogi was number 2, and I said, "Who the hell is this Yogi?" Boy, have I found out.
I did a show that I wish you were on this morning because I told the story of having a picture of Whitey Ford being introduced to Yogi Berra for the first time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you posted it or somebody.
Eddie Meet Larry. Yeah.
Yeah, Eddie, right.
Yeah.
Eddie Meet Larry.
They told that story. The two of them and Phil Rizzuto did a program with Tim Rushert a bunch of years ago. That's on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
So I watched that, and that's where I first got that story.
I will definitely look
at
that.
It's Yogi and Whitey, and then Rizzuto comes in the middle.
Well, we're going to do many more shows on nicknames because we barely scratched the surface this morning.
Yeah, I've been doing a study to see how many players were on all 5 Top sets and all 5 Bowman sets during those years. I came up with, at first I thought it was only Berra and Rizzuto, but I found the third one, which surprised the heck out of me. Sherman Lawler.
Oh,
the catcher.
I remember that name a little.
Yeah, he was the catcher on the White Sox, primarily on the White Sox.
Yes.
But the first year, 1951, where he was in both sets, he was on the St. Louis Browns.
Okay. Did you like the cards where they had the 4 or 5 coaches and the manager?
No, I never really liked cards with one or more players. I really didn't like it.
Okay.
And certainly the rookie cards, like Pete Rose and Willie Stargell were on a rookie card with 3 others.
And the others you
in
never
63, and they produced custom cards. They produced custom cards for every year that Maury Wills was not on a Topps card.
Okay. I can't say anything because Mark Weiss, who is one of those...
He does custom cards,
artists,
yeah.
He produced one for me on a 62 background, the 62 card background, with me with my Met hat, my Met jacket.
I saw that. Did he send you the card?
Pardon? No, you can make up the cards. I'm going to have to find a place that can print up a bunch of them.
Yeah.
I don't want to pay $1 a card.
No, because I asked him, because several years ago the Dodgers put out a bunch of 55 players that were not originally in the set. And the only one that's missing between the ones that were produced in the set and the ones that were produced in this run is Pee Wee Reese.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so, it was, I'd love to get the 55 Pee Wee Reese tops, but there's so many, in those years there's so many of them. The guys who were not in one set or another, and then after 1955, Topps bought Bowman out. And, 56 was the first year that, they had, all the people who were Bowman exclusive, long-term Bowman exclusives, finally made it to the Topps cards.
And years later, Topps started printing under the Bowman label. They printed cards.
They had the rights to the name. They started printing. It was like a late set where they included prospects.
Right.
And then, of course, you have update sets and all this stuff. I mean, there's a million different.
Oh yeah, no question. Where
one thing,
the guy in two different uniforms, same guy in the same set.
Yeah, they put the updates.
They'll give him a better picture with his cap, without a cap.
Yeah, because they shot them all in December, before free agency and all that, and trades and all this stuff had a chance to check out. They produced them in December, so then they come up with the update
last year's pictures, and sometimes they'll have pictures on file, and
like Cal Ripken's rookie card is an update set. So, which is, which gets a much less.
His brother's card is the most beloved card in.
His brother's card?
Yes.
Joey Ripken card?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a classic.
That's a classic. You'll find it out there on eBay. We're not going to have to explain that one, Lucy.
There's also one of a former Brave second baseman named Glenn Hubbard, who has a python draped around his neck.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's clever.
Yeah, but basically, there's also a very ironic story about Ted Williams. As I mentioned earlier, Bowman had to pull their 1954 Williams card because Topps had exclusive rights. When Topps decided to reprint their 54 set, and that's the last one full set that they reprinted because apparently they didn't sell very well. They couldn't print the two Williams cards. Williams had the first one and the last card, number 250, in the set because Upper Deck had the rights to Williams.
Oh.
At the time. So they had to pay Upper Deck a ton of money, maybe the money they got from Bowman 35 years earlier, to pay Upper Deck for the rights to Ted Williams. So they got that, and Upper Deck put out the two Williams cards, and they put out a facsimile Mickey Mantle card, which those three cards go for a fairly decent penny right now. Yeah. But it's really ironic that they screwed Bowman in 1954, and Upper Deck screwed them in 1990 and 91.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the baseball card industry took a hit when they went on strike in 94, as did everything around baseball. 94.
Yeah, kids today just aren't interested in this stuff for the most part.
Right.
I mean, it used to come out, you probably remember this, the first cards used to come out in March, middle of March, late March, and you go out and you buy a dozen packs, you spend 60 cents, $1, and get 20 packs. And you'd be there with your friends trading, your duplicate for their duplicate. And it didn't matter whether you're trading Mickey Mantle for Dick Week. You had 2 Dick Weeks and I had 2 Mickey Mantles. I'd trade you Mickey Mantle for Dick Week because I needed Dick Week.
To fill your set.
Yeah.
And
now.
then you'd open a pack and you'd go, got it, need it, got it, need
yeah.
it, need it.
Now, what's incredible is in early 1993, it's 25 years ago, I took my nephew, who just had gotten bar mitzvah at that time, to a card show. It was a couple of miles from where they lived. And he went and he bought, these kids 13 years old, bought a rookie Dennis Eckersley for $75 and a rookie Dave Winfield for $150. And he was whipping $20 bills out of his pocket the way you or I used to whip out nickels and dimes. And I'm standing there with my mouth. He wasn't the only kid doing that. There were a bunch of them. The kids with magnifying glasses to check the card to see if there's any bumps or cuts or bad corners or whatever.
Kids with no pleasure
jaw-dropping.
Flipping a card against the wall, getting it closer to the wall.
Forget it.
We'll flip pennies. We flip cards.
Yeah.
If they landed on top of each other, that's even more money. That's even more.
But you only did that with the duplicates or the lousy players.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But then again, if you're a gambler at heart, and Stephen had a way of always flipping that card closer to the wall, and I'd start out giving him the duplicates, and pretty soon I'm throwing down a Hank Bauer and somebody I would not have preferred to give up, just because it's a form of gambling.
Yeah, and the thing is like, when you go on these Facebook sites like this, and Jim put up the other day, remember a pitcher with the Red Sox in the 50s named Leo Kiley.
I do.
Whose claim to fame is that in 1957 he won 21 games for the San Francisco Seals in the Pacific Coast League, pitching only 146 innings. But somebody put down, it seemed that he said in 1954 or whatever, says every time he bought a pack of cards, this guy's card was in there. And we all had certain guys that, were very, very nondescript ball players who, no matter what reason, for every time you bought a pack or a few packs, you always get a card of this particular player.
Every time I went to a game at the Polo Grounds, Jim Hearn pitched. I can't remember seeing Sal Magley, Larry Jansen, Bill Coslow, any of those guys. It was always Hoyne. Who's pitching today? Hoyne.
Yeah.
Same with
one of the years in the 70s, it seemed like every Yankee game I went to, Pat Dobson was starting. It happens like that.
Yeah.
Just really the way it is.
The four pitchers that pitched for the Orioles that won 20 games.
Yeah, McNally, Palmer. Palmer's the only one that's still around. McNally passed away. Mike Cuellar passed away, and Pat Dobson passed away.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to think of it. Let's not pass away this week.
Yeah. But basically, it's and one of the things I've mentioned on a couple of the podcasts that you expect all these guys who are now 80 years old to look the way they did on the baseball cards 50 and 60 years ago.
Yeah.
It's perpetual youth. And but the whole, there's a dealer out of, I think, Cincinnati named Dean Hadley. It was a prominent dealer that put out a book a small book on the Topps Bowman Wars from the 1950s. It's available for about $12. But it's good for a base understanding. But I decided a couple of years ago this topic interested me quite a bit because
well,
you
you've
never
given
get
us
a full
more
set
than
of.
a basic understanding.
I got into
this
it
is
more. I got into it more deeply.
Thank you very much. This is a primer. And I want to plug the other shows you have on the network. You're going to be talking this week
With
to
David Finoli on the chances of the Pirates.
Okay.
Probably on Wednesday afternoon, and probably do another session with David Nemec Friday.
Beautiful. Keep them coming, Al.
All right.
Great shows.
Tell Peter I said hello.
Friend. That's the best I can tell you.
Okay, say hi to Tally and tell Peter I said hello.
Maybe
he'll come up with a topic soon.
He's going to be when I'm not taping that tonight. He's going to be watching the
Oscars. So
tonight.
He's not coming on tonight then. I gave up. It's only my thing, but I gave up watching the Oscars after they gave an award to Vanessa Redgrave for Julia, where she was fooling around with Yasser Arafat.
Okay.
That's it. It's one of my things is I tell friends, and this is only my perspective. I don't expect anybody, everybody or anybody to agree with me. There's no industry that's in love with itself more and gives itself more awards than the entertainment industry.
Unless it's the baseball
No,
industry.
even they've turned the baseball awards into shows for the MLB network, but now not on the scale of this. We see the Screen Actors Guild and Golden Globes and film critics and Oscars, and you got a million music awards, a million TV awards. It's just it got to the point where it's just maybe it brings in ratings, and they'll do anything that brings in ratings.
Well, let's hope they could read the results right tonight, everybody.
Yeah. Also, one last point I want to make. There was an article in today's Daily News that said that between CBS and Turner, they're paying the NCAA for tournament rights to the tournament games, $11 million for 14 years. $11 billion for 14 years, excuse me.
Wow.
Because they got everybody with the brackets and all the rest of this. They turn this into $1 billion industry, and the players get zilch.
Well, we've had an ongoing thing on.
Well, when I read this, hopefully we can bring this to the attention of
Al college basketball. What's happening? Breaking stories every day. Miller and what have you. It's going to become semi-pro. It has been, but officially it's going to be semi-pro. Just the way it is. So,
okay, so I'll read Hal's column tomorrow, and I'll be back Tuesday night.
Good. Can't wait to see you. Thank you again, Al.
You're welcome. I enjoyed this very much. It helped me a lot today.
Good. I know you're going through some tough times.
Okay.
I'm appreciative. It helped me a lot, too, Al. Always does, talking to you. You're terrific.
Thank you very much.
Be good, everybody. Thank you. This is Al Blumkin. I'm Ralph Tyko, Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. This is the podcast, Comfortably Zoned. Adios, everybody.